The call came at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday that had started like any other suburban nightmare. I was sitting in my home office, pretending to care about quarterly security reports while nursing my third bourbon of the evening, when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Dad? The whisper was so faint, I almost missed it. Dad, he smashed Mommy's face with a hammer. He's looking for me, holding a taser. Sophie. My 6-year-old daughter was hiding somewhere in Emma's house, and Derek Tully, my ex-wife's new husband and the town's golden boy police officer, had finally shown his true colors. Sophie, baby, where are you? I was already grabbing my keys, my jacket, my concealed carry permit, and the Glock that came with it. In the closet, in Mommy's room, I can hear him yelling downstairs. He's saying bad words about you, Daddy. Of course he was. Officer Derek Tully, 38 years old, 6 feet of small-town swagger wrapped in a badge and an attitude problem. He'd married my ex-wife Emma 6 months after our divorce was finalized, moved into the house I'd bought, and spent every opportunity reminding me that he was the real man in Sophie's life now. Stay hidden, sweetheart. Don't make a sound. Daddy's coming. He's coming upstairs, Daddy. I'm scared. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, and tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. The line went silent. I was 10 minutes away. 10 minutes through empty suburban streets, past manicured lawns and houses full of people who thought their biggest problem was whether the HOA would approve their new mailbox design. 10 minutes to get to my daughter before a corrupt cop with a taser and a hammer decided she was a witness he couldn't afford to leave alive. 10 minutes to become the man I used to be. People in Millbrook Heights knew me as Nathan Harlan, the quiet guy who ran a small, private security consulting business out of his home office. The divorced dad who picked up his daughter every other weekend and never caused any trouble. What they didn't know was that before I became a suburban dad with a receding hairline and a mortgage, I was Staff Sergeant Nathan Harlan, Navy SEAL, with 3 tours in Afghanistan and a chest full of medals I kept in a box in my closet. I hadn't touched that box in 4 years. Tonight, I wouldn't need to. My truck roared to life, and I peeled out of my driveway fast enough to leave rubber on the asphalt. Mrs. Henderson from across the street peeked through her curtains, probably getting ready to file another complaint with the HOA about excessive noise during quiet hours. If she only knew what real noise sounded like. The streets were empty except for the occasional patrol car. Tully's buddies, probably. The Millbrook Heights Police Department was a tight-knit group of good old boys who protected their own, and Derek Tully was definitely one of their own. Clean record, commendations for community service, married to a respectable divorced mother, the perfect small-town cop, except perfect cops don't beat their wives with hammers. My phone rang. Jordan McKenzie, my old SEAL buddy, who'd lost his left leg to an IED outside Kandahar and now spent his time running the best private investigation service this side of the Mississippi from his wheelchair-accessible apartment. Nate, I just intercepted police chatter. 3 units heading to Maple Street. That's Emma's address. I know, Sophie called me. Tully snapped. Jesus, you need backup? Negative. This is personal. Nate. Jordan, I need you to do something for me. Hack Tully's phone, his personal cell, not the department one. I want to know who he's been talking to, what he's been planning, and check Emma's financials while you're at it. Copy that. Nate, don't do anything stupid. I hung up and pressed the accelerator harder. 7 minutes out. The thing about being a SEAL is that you learn to compartmentalize. You put the fear, the anger, the human emotions into a little box, and you focus on the mission. Right now, the mission was simple. Extract Sophie, neutralize the threat, survive to fight another day. But the thing about being a father is that compartmentalization becomes a lot harder when it's your little girl whispering into a phone that mommy's face got smashed with a hammer. Emma and I had been married for 8 years before it all fell apart. She was a marketing executive at a mid-sized firm downtown, ambitious and beautiful, and absolutely convinced that she'd married beneath her station when she chose a military grunt over the lawyers and doctors her mother had paraded in front of her. When I came back from my last deployment with a piece of shrapnel in my shoulder and a diagnosis of PTSD, she decided she'd had enough of playing the supportive military wife. The divorce was brutal. She got the house, half my retirement savings, and primary custody of Sophie. I got every other weekend and the privilege of paying child support to fund her new life with Officer Wonderful. I'd tried to be the bigger man, tried to co-parent peacefully, to put Sophie's needs first, to swallow my pride every time Tully answered the door at my old house wearing my old bathrobe and calling my daughter kiddo like he'd been there since day one. But there's only so much a man can take before he remembers what he's capable of. 5 minutes out. I could see the flashing lights now, red and blue painting the perfect suburban street in colors that didn't belong. 3 patrol cars, just like Jordan had said, an ambulance, fire truck, the whole circus. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your daughter is fine. Emma fell down the stairs. Accidents happen. Stay away, or they'll happen to you too. Derek Tully had just made his first mistake. He'd threatened me directly, in writing, from his personal phone. In the military, we had a saying, the enemy's greatest weapon is often his own stupidity. I parked 3 blocks away and approached on foot, using the shadows and landscaping to stay invisible. Old habits die hard, and some skills you never lose, no matter how long you spend pretending to be a suburban dad who worries about quarterly tax payments and parent-teacher conferences. The scene was a whirlwind of activity. EMTs were rushing Emma out on a stretcher, her face hidden beneath bandages and injuries. Tully standing next to his patrol car, talking to 2 other officers, playing the distraught husband perfectly. Neighbors gathered on their front lawns, whispering and pointing, and probably already crafting their Facebook posts about the domestic incident on Maple Street. But no Sophie. No little girl in the back of an ambulance or sitting in a patrol car with a blanket around her shoulders. She was still in that closet. I circled around to the back of the house, to the oak tree I'd planted in the backyard 5 years ago when Sophie was learning to walk. The same tree I'd built her treehouse in, the same tree I'd hung her tire swing from. The same tree that gave me access to the second-floor window of the master bedroom. Climbing trees in full darkness while wearing street clothes isn't as easy as it looks in movies, but muscle memory is a beautiful thing. Within 2 minutes, I was crouched on the branch outside Emma's bedroom window, looking through the glass at the closet door that was cracked open just enough for a 6-year-old to peek out. I tapped gently on the window. 3 short taps, 2 long ones, 3 short again. SOS in Morse code, a game I'd taught Sophie during one of our weekend visits, just for fun. The closet door opened wider, and my daughter's tear-streaked face appeared. When she saw me, her whole body sagged with relief. The window was locked, but locks are just suggestions when your daughter's life is on the line. I used my elbow to break the glass as quietly as possible, reached inside to flip the latch and slipped into the room that used to be mine. Sophie ran to me, and I scooped her up in my arms, feeling her tiny body shake with suppressed sobs. It's okay, baby. Daddy's here. You did so good, calling me, so brave. He was so angry, Daddy. He kept saying Mommy was a liar and that you were trying to take me away and that he wasn't going to let that happen. Then he struck her with the hammer from the garage, and she collapsed, bleeding heavily. Where is he now? Downstairs, talking to the other policemen. He told them that Mommy fell down the stairs, but I saw him hit her. I saw everything. I set her down and knelt in front of her, looking directly into her eyes. Sophie, I need you to listen to me very carefully. We're going to leave now, through the window. I'm going to carry you, and we're going to climb down the tree, and then we're going to go to your Aunt Jordan's house where you'll be safe. But I need you to promise me something. What, Daddy? I need you to promise me that you'll tell the truth about what you saw tonight. no matter who asks you, no matter what anyone else says happened. Can you do that for me?" She nodded solemnly. "I promise." "Good girl. Now let's get out of here." Getting down from a second-story window while carrying a 6-year-old is significantly harder than getting up, but we managed. Sophie was quiet and brave, trusting me completely as we made our way across the dark backyard and through the neighbor's hedge. We were almost to my truck when the shouting started behind us. "She's gone! The kid's gone! Check the house again!" Tully's voice no longer calm and controlled. Panicked, desperate. We ran. I strapped Sophie into the passenger seat of my truck and drove straight to Jordan's apartment complex, my hands steady on the wheel, but my mind racing through possibilities. In the rearview mirror, I could see patrol cars spreading out through the neighborhood, their searchlights sweeping across yards and driveways. Jordan Mackenzie lived in a converted warehouse downtown, the kind of place that looked like urban decay from the outside but housed a technological fortress within. He'd used his disability settlement and his skills as a former military intelligence specialist to create something between a private investigation firm and a one-man NSA operation. He was waiting for us in the parking garage, his wheelchair positioned next to the elevator, a tablet in his lap, and a grim expression on his scarred face. "How bad?" he asked as I lifted Sophie out of the truck. "Bad enough." "What did you find?" "Let's get inside first. I've got hot chocolate and cartoons queued up for the little one." Jordan's apartment was a study in controlled chaos. Banks of computer monitors lined the walls, cables snaked across the floor, and the air hummed with the white noise of cooling fans and hard drives. But he'd also set up a comfortable living area with a big-screen TV and a couch that was perfect for a tired 6-year-old. Sophie curled up with a blanket and a mug of hot chocolate, her eyes already heavy with exhaustion. Within 10 minutes, she was asleep, the remote control still clutched in her small hand. "She's safe here," Jordan said, wheeling over to his main workstation. "Now let me show you what your ex-wife and her cop boyfriend have been up to." The first screen showed Derek Tully's call log for the past month. Dozens of calls to Emma, of course, but also to numbers I didn't recognize. Jordan had already run them through his databases. "This one's interesting," he said, pointing to a number that appeared 17 times in the past 2 weeks. "Belongs to a guy named Marcus Webb, private investigator out of Chicago. Specializes in custody cases and evidence gathering for divorce proceedings." "What kind of evidence gathering?" "The fabricated kind. Webb's been investigated twice by the Illinois State Bar for manufacturing evidence in custody disputes. Never convicted, but his reputation speaks for itself." The second screen showed Emma's financial records, credit card statements, bank transfers, loan applications. "Your ex-wife has been busy," Jordan continued. "She took out a $50,000 personal loan 3 weeks ago. Told the bank it was for home renovations, but look at this." He pulled up a series of transactions. $20,000 to Marcus Webb. $15,000 to a lawyer in Chicago who specialized in complex custody relocations. $10,000 to a company called Digital Forensic Solutions that, according to Jordan's research, created fake text messages and email trails for legal proceedings. "They were planning to frame you," Jordan said quietly. "The whole thing. Fake evidence of abuse, manufactured threats, probably some planted evidence in your house or car. They were going to take Sophie away from you permanently and disappear." I stared at the screens, feeling a cold rage settle in my chest. And tonight? Tonight was supposed to be the grand finale. Tully eliminates Emma, frames you for it, and then heroically shields Sophie from her dangerous father. He gains the life insurance payout, the community's sympathy, and legal custody of your daughter. Except Sophie saw everything. "Except Sophie saw everything," Jordan agreed, "which makes her a problem they need to solve." My phone rang. The caller ID showed Derek Tully's name. I answered on speaker. "What do you want, Derek?" I want my stepdaughter back, Nathan. Emma's in critical condition at the hospital, and Sophie needs to be with family right now. Funny thing about family, Derek. I'm her actual father. You're just the guy who married her mother and tried to murder her with a hammer. A pause. When Tully spoke again, his voice was harder. I don't know what kind of lies that kid has been telling you, but Emma fell down the stairs. Tragic accident. I've got 3 officers who will testify to the scene we found. I'm sure you do. The same 3 officers who helped you plan this whole thing? Another pause, longer this time. You're making a mistake, Nathan. You're interfering with a police investigation, and you're keeping a child from her legal guardian during a family crisis. Bring Sophie to the hospital right now, or I'll have you arrested for kidnapping. Try it. I hung up and turned to Jordan. How long before they track us here? They won't. This building doesn't exist in any official records, and I've been routing our communications through 7 different proxy servers. But Nate, you can't hide forever. Eventually, you're going to have to face this head-on. I know, but not tonight. Tonight, I need to make sure Sophie is safe and gather enough evidence to bury these bastards. What do you need? Everything. Phone records, financial transactions, connections to this web character, anything that proves premeditation. And I need it admissible in court. Jordan cracked his knuckles and turned to his keyboards. Give me 6 hours. I spent the night watching my daughter sleep and planning my next moves. By dawn, Jordan had compiled a digital dossier that would make the FBI jealous. Bank records showing the payments to Webb and the Chicago lawyer. Phone records proving coordination between Tully, Emma, and their co-conspirators. Even security camera footage from the bank where Emma had applied for the loan, clearly showing her discussing the custody situation with the loan officer. But the most damning evidence came from Tully's personal phone. Jordan had managed to crack his encryption and recover deleted text messages dating back 3 months. Emma, Nathan's getting suspicious about the weekend visits. We need to move faster. Tully, Webb says he needs 2 more weeks to get the fake evidence in place. Can you keep playing the scared wife until then? Emma, I'm tired of this. I want him gone, and I want his money. All of it. Tully, patience, baby. After tonight, you'll be a widow, and I'll be Sophie's hero. Then we disappear and start over somewhere warm. Emma, what about Sophie? She's not stupid. She might figure things out. Tully, kids forget. And if she doesn't, well, accidents happen to kids too. I read that last exchange 3 times, my hands trembling with anger. They had been planning to eliminate my daughter if she became a problem. Nate, Jordan said softly. You need to see this. He'd pulled up the local news website. The headline read, Local father kidnaps daughter after wife's tragic accident. Below it was my driver's license photo next to a picture of Derek Tully in his dress uniform, looking like the perfect small-town hero. The article quoted Police Chief Morrison calling me armed and dangerous and asking for the public's help in locating Sophie. There was even a quote from Emma's mother, calling me an unstable veteran who never got the help he needed. They're controlling the narrative, Jordan observed. By the time you surface with the real evidence, public opinion will be completely against you. Then we change the narrative. I woke Sophie gently and helped her get dressed. She was quiet and subdued, but she managed to eat some breakfast and even smiled when Jordan showed her a video of a cat playing piano on his computer. Daddy, are we in trouble? She asked as I combed her hair. No, sweetheart. The bad people are in trouble, but we need to go talk to some good people who can help us make sure the bad people can't hurt anyone else. The police? Not the police, baby. Someone better. The FBI field office in downtown Indianapolis was a 40-minute drive from Jordan's apartment. I'd called ahead and spoken to Special Agent Sarah Chen, a federal investigator who specialized in corruption cases involving local law enforcement. Agent Chen met us in the lobby, a small Asian woman in her mid-30s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She took one look at Sophie clinging to my hand and led us to a family interview room equipped with toys and child-friendly furniture. Mr. Harlan, I've reviewed the materials your friend sent over this morning. If even half of this is accurate, we're looking at conspiracy, attempted murder, fraud, and corruption charges that could put several people away for decades. It's all accurate. And there's more. I told her everything. Sophie's phone call, the scene at the house, the text message threat from Tully, the evidence Jordan had uncovered. Agent Chen listened without interruption, taking notes and occasionally asking for clarification. When I finished, she turned to Sophie. "Sweetheart, I know this is scary, but I need to ask you some questions about what happened last night. Is that okay?" Sophie nodded and squeezed my hand tighter. "Can you tell me what you saw when Derek got angry at your mommy?" In a small, clear voice, Sophie recounted everything. The argument, the hammer, Emma falling, Tully's threats. Agent Chen recorded every word, her expression growing darker with each detail. "Sophie, you're very brave for telling the truth. It's going to help us make sure Derek can't hurt anyone else." After the interview, Agent Chen walked us to a secure conference room where 2 other agents were waiting with laptops and case files. "Mr. Harlan, I'm going to be direct with you. Based on your daughter's testimony and the evidence you've provided, we have enough to arrest Derek Tully and charge him with attempted murder, conspiracy, and about a dozen federal crimes related to the corruption and fraud aspects of this case. What about Emma? If she survives her injuries, she'll face charges as a co-conspirator. The evidence clearly shows she was an active participant in the plan to frame you and steal your assets. And Sophie? Sophie will be placed in your full custody immediately. We'll also be providing protection for both of you until we can round up all the players in this conspiracy." I felt a weight lift from my shoulders that I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. What happens next? Next, we arrest some dirty cops and show them what real justice looks like. The arrest went down at 2:47 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon, right in front of the Millbrook Heights Police Department. Agent Chen had coordinated with the state police to ensure that none of Tully's buddies could interfere or destroy evidence. I watched from across the street as federal agents walked Derek Tully out of the building in handcuffs, his face red with rage and humiliation. The local news crews were there, of course, but this time the narrative was different. Federal agents today arrested Millbrook Heights police officer Derek Tully on charges of attempted murder, conspiracy, and fraud, the reporter announced. The arrest stems from an investigation into an alleged plot to murder his wife and frame her ex-husband for the crime. By evening, the story had spread across social media. The same neighbors who'd been sharing my wanted photo 12 hours earlier were now posting about how they'd always suspected something wasn't right about Officer Tully. Emma survived her injuries, but the doctors said she'd need multiple surgeries to repair the damage to her skull and face. When she was finally able to speak, she tried to maintain the lie about falling down the stairs, but the physical evidence didn't support her story. The angle of the wounds, the spatter patterns, the position of the hammer, everything indicated a deliberate attack. More importantly, Agent Chen had obtained warrants for Emma's phone records, which revealed the full scope of the conspiracy. Text messages with Marcus Webb discussing the fabricated evidence. Emails with the Chicago lawyer about relocating with Sophie after my arrest. Even a recorded phone call where Emma discussed taking out additional life insurance on me, just in case Derek's plan doesn't work. The federal investigation expanded rapidly. Marcus Webb was arrested in Chicago, along with 2 other private investigators who specialized in manufacturing evidence for custody cases. The Chicago lawyer was disbarred and charged with fraud. 3 Millbrook Heights police officers were suspended pending investigation into their connections to Tully's scheme. But the most satisfying moment came when Agent Chen called to tell me about Emma's confession. "She's trying to make a deal," Chen explained. "Full cooperation in exchange for a reduced sentence." According to her statement, The whole plan was Tully's idea, and she was just a victim of his manipulation. Do you believe that? Not for a second. The evidence shows she was an active participant from the beginning. But her confession fills in some gaps we had in the timeline, and it gives us additional evidence against Tully. What kind of evidence? The kind that's going to put him away for the rest of his life. Emma's confession revealed that Tully had been planning to destroy me for months. The original plan was to stage a domestic violence incident where I supposedly attacked Emma and Sophie, forcing Tully to shoot me in self-defense. When that plan seemed too risky, they'd switched to the frame-up strategy, using Webb's fabricated evidence to have me arrested and imprisoned while they gained control of my assets and custody of Sophie. The hammer attack was meant to be the final act. Emma would be found lifeless, seemingly the victim of her abusive ex-husband, with Sophie as a traumatized witness to support Tully's story. But Sophie was supposed to be at her grandmother's house that night, safely away from the chaos. She came home early from her grandmother's, Emma had told Agent Chen. She wasn't supposed to see anything. Derek was furious when he realized she was upstairs. What was he planning to do about that? He said kids were unreliable witnesses. He said if she told anyone what really happened, he'd make sure she had an accident too. That confession determined Tully's future. Conspiracy to commit murder was already serious, but threatening a 6-year-old child escalated it to a capital punishment case. The media coverage was intense but fair. My military service record helped. It's hard to paint a decorated Navy SEAL as an unstable domestic abuser when federal investigators are holding press conferences about the conspiracy to frame him. Sophie and I were portrayed as the victims we actually were, and public sympathy swung heavily in our favor. The civil lawsuits came next. Jordan helped me find an excellent attorney who specialized in cases involving police misconduct and wrongful prosecution. We sued Derek Tully, the Millbrook Heights Police Department, Emma, Marcus Webb, and everyone else involved in the conspiracy. How much are we talking about? I asked the lawyer during our first meeting. Conservatively? 7 figures. Possibly 8. Depending on how much the city wants to avoid a public trial that exposes the corruption in their police department. And Sophie's college fund? Sophie's college fund will be the least of your financial concerns. The house was another matter. Technically, Emma still owned it, but she was facing decades in federal prison and needed money for legal fees. I bought it back from her at a significant discount, then spent a week erasing every trace of Derek Tully's presence. His clothes went to charity. His furniture went to the dump. His personal items went into a bonfire in the backyard that half the neighborhood came to watch. It was cathartic in a way I hadn't expected. Sophie was resilient in the way that children often are. She had nightmares for the first few weeks, but therapy helped, and being back in her childhood home with her father seemed to provide the stability she needed. She rarely mentioned Derek or asked about Emma, focusing instead on school and friends and the normal concerns of a 6-year-old. "Daddy, are the bad people going to come back?" she asked one night as I tucked her into bed. "No, sweetheart. The bad people are in jail, and they're going to stay there for a very long time." "Good. I like it better when it's just you and me." "Me too, baby. Me too." The trial was a media circus. Derek Tully's defense attorney tried every strategy in the book, claiming his client was framed, that Emma had manipulated him, that the federal agents had manufactured evidence. None of it stuck. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. Tully was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Emma received 25 years. Marcus Webb got 15 years and was ordered to pay restitution to all the families he'd helped destroy with his fabricated evidence. But the real victory wasn't the prison sentences or the financial settlements. The real victory was the look on Sophie's face when Agent Chen called to tell us that Derek Tully would never be able to hurt anyone again. "It's over, Daddy. It's over, sweetheart. Can we have pizza for dinner?" "We can have whatever you want for dinner." 6 months after Derek Tully's sentencing, life had settled into a new normal. Sophie was thriving in school. I'd expanded my security consulting business with the settlement money, and we'd both learned to sleep through the night without checking the locks twice. But small towns have long memories, and not everyone in Millbrook Heights was ready to let the past go. The first sign of trouble came at the grocery store on a Saturday morning. Sophie and I were shopping for ingredients to make pancakes when I noticed Casey Morrison, Emma's former best friend and the police chief's daughter, whispering to a group of women by the produce section. Casey had been Emma's maid of honor at her wedding to Derek, and she'd never made any secret of her belief that I was an unfit father who'd driven Emma into Derek's arms with my military attitude and anger issues. The fact that Derek had turned out to be a would-be murderer hadn't changed her opinion of me. As we walked past with our cart, Casey spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. I still think there's more to this story than what came out in court. Emma was terrified of him, you know. She told me he used to threaten her all the time. I kept walking, but Sophie tugged on my sleeve. "Daddy, why is that lady saying mean things about you?" "Some people need someone to blame when bad things happen, sweetheart. It's easier than accepting the truth." But Casey wasn't finished. Over the next few weeks, she launched a campaign of whispered accusations and social media innuendo designed to rehabilitate Emma's reputation and cast doubt on the federal investigation. According to Casey's version of events, Emma had been a victim twice over, first of my psychological abuse during our marriage, and then of Derek's manipulation afterward. The conspiracy to frame me became a desperate attempt by a terrified woman to protect her daughter from an unstable ex-husband. It was complete nonsense, contradicted by mountains of evidence and Emma's own confession, but it found an audience among people who wanted to believe that the real story was more complicated than the one that had played out in federal court. The Whisper campaign might have remained just that, whispers, if not for the Millbrook Heights community Facebook page. I'd avoided social media throughout the investigation and trial, but Jordan had been monitoring it for threats and keeping me informed of any concerning developments. Most of the posts had been supportive, with neighbors expressing shock at Derek's crimes and sympathy for Sophie and me. But 3 weeks after the grocery store incident, Casey posted a long, emotional message that changed the tone completely. "I've stayed quiet for months out of respect for everyone involved," she wrote, "but I can't stay silent anymore. Emma Harlan was my best friend, and I knew her better than anyone. She was not the villain in this story. She was a scared mother trying to protect her daughter from a man who had been threatening and intimidating her for years. Yes, she made mistakes. Yes, she trusted the wrong person in Derek Tully. But she was a victim, not a conspirator." The post went viral within hours, shared and commented on by hundreds of people. Some defended me and pointed out the evidence from the trial, but others seemed eager to embrace this alternative narrative that painted Emma as a misunderstood victim rather than a calculating criminal. "Nathan Harlan used his military training to intimidate and control his family," wrote one commenter. Emma was probably afraid to tell the truth about his abuse because she knew what he was capable of. "I always thought there was something off about him," added another. "Too quiet, too controlled." Those are the ones you have to watch out for. The comments got worse from there, with people speculating about my mental health, my fitness as a father, and whether the federal investigation had been thorough enough. Several people suggested that I'd somehow manipulated the evidence or coerced Emma's confession. Sophie started coming home from school with questions. "Daddy, Melissa's mom says her mom says you hurt Mommy before Derek did. Is that true?" "No, sweetheart. That's not true." Some people are confused about what really happened. But why would they say it if it's not true? How do you explain to a 6-year-old that some adults prefer comfortable lies to difficult truths? That it's easier to believe in a familiar story about an abusive ex-husband than to accept that a respected police officer and a suburban mother could plan to commit murder for money? I called Agent Chen to ask if there was anything I could do legally about the defamation campaign. "Technically, you could sue for libel," she said, But that would just give Casey Morrison and her supporters more attention and make you look like you're trying to silence your critics. My advice is to ignore it and let it blow over. And if it doesn't blow over, then we'll revisit your options. But Nathan, you need to understand something. You won. Derek Tully is in prison for life, Emma is serving 25 years, and you have full custody of your daughter. Don't let a few bitter people on Facebook steal that victory from you. She was right, of course. But it's hard to ignore it when your neighbors start crossing the street to avoid you, and other parents pull their children away when Sophie tries to play with them at the park. The situation escalated when Casey organized a Justice for Emma rally in the town square. About 30 people showed up, mostly Emma's former friends and Derek's supporters from the police department. They held signs with slogans like "Investigate the Investigator" and "Mothers Deserve Justice Too." Local news covered the rally, giving Casey a platform to repeat her claims about Emma being a victim and me being the real villain. She called for an independent investigation into the federal case and suggested that I'd used my connections in the military to influence the outcome. Emma Harlan is sitting in federal prison right now for trying to protect her daughter, Casey told the reporter. Meanwhile, the man who drove her to desperation is being treated like a hero. Where's the justice in that? The story aired on the evening news, complete with footage of Casey's rally and file video from Derek's arrest. To someone who hadn't followed the case closely, it might have seemed like there were legitimate questions about my guilt or innocence. Sophie saw the news report at a friend's house and came home in tears. "Daddy, they showed your picture on TV and said you were a bad man. Why are they saying that?" I held her while she cried, feeling a familiar rage building in my chest. Not the cold, controlled anger of a soldier, but the hot, protective fury of a father watching his child suffer for crimes she didn't commit. Sometimes, sweetheart, people get confused about who the good guys and bad guys are. But you know the truth, right? You know what really happened that night. I know Derek hurt Mommy with the hammer. I know he was going to hurt me too. I know you saved me. That's right. And no matter what anyone else says, that's what really happened. But privately, I was reaching the end of my patience. Casey Morrison and her supporters weren't just attacking me. They were traumatizing my daughter and poisoning her against her own memories of that night. It was time to remind them who they were dealing with. I called Jordan and asked him to dig deeper into Casey's background and her supporters at the rally. If they wanted to play dirty, I was prepared to show them what dirty actually looked like. "What am I looking for?" Jordan asked. "Everything. Financial records, social media posts, criminal history, employment issues, marital problems. These people want to destroy my reputation based on lies and speculation. Let's see how they like having their own lives examined under a microscope." "Nate, are you sure about this? Once we go down this road, there's no coming back." "They made the choice to come after my daughter, Jordan. I'm just responding in kind. Copy that. Give me 48 hours. Jordan's research was even more damaging than I'd expected. Casey Morrison, it turned out, was having an affair with her husband's business partner and had been embezzling money from the charity she managed. 3 of the rally organizers had DUI arrests that had been mysteriously dismissed. The police officer who'd spoken at the rally was under internal investigation for excessive force. But the most interesting discovery was Casey's financial connection to Emma. Bank records showed that Casey had received a $10,000 loan from Emma just 2 weeks before Derek's arrest, money that had never been repaid and was probably intended as payment for Casey's efforts to discredit me. I compiled all of Jordan's research into a comprehensive dossier and sent copies to the local newspaper, the FBI, and the IRS. Then I created my own Facebook post. For months, I've ignored the lies and accusations being spread by Casey Morrison and her supporters. I've tried to take the high road, to focus on rebuilding my life with my daughter, rather than engaging in public disputes with people who refuse to accept the truth about Emma Harlan and Derek Tully. But when those lies start affecting my daughter's well-being and mental health, the high road ends. Casey Morrison claims to be seeking justice for Emma, But what she's really seeking is attention and money. The attached documents show that Casey received $10,000 from Emma Harlan shortly before Emma's arrest, money that was never reported to authorities and was likely payment for Casey's efforts to spread lies about me and my family. The documents also show that Casey has been embezzling money from the children's charity she manages, having an affair with her husband's business partner, and coordinating with corrupt police officers to spread false information about the federal investigation. If Casey Morrison and her supporters want to continue attacking my family based on lies and speculation, they should be prepared to have their own lives examined with the same level of scrutiny they've applied to mine. The difference is that my life can withstand that examination. Can theirs? I posted the message along with Jordan's research at 8 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. By noon, it had been shared over 500 times. By evening, Casey Morrison had deleted her Facebook account, and the Justice for Emma page had disappeared. The local newspaper ran a follow-up story about Casey's embezzlement and the financial connection to Emma. The police chief, Casey's father, announced that he was recusing himself from any matters related to the Tully case and launching an internal investigation into his officers' involvement in the defamation campaign. Most importantly, the whisper campaign stopped. Parents started letting their children play with Sophie again. Neighbors stopped crossing the street when they saw me. The grocery store conversations returned to normal topics like weather and local sports. Sophie noticed the change immediately. "Daddy, people are being nice to us again." "Yes, they are, sweetheart." "Did you make the mean lady stop saying bad things about us?" "I showed people the truth about the mean lady." Sometimes that's all it takes. That night, after Sophie was asleep, I sat on my back porch with a beer and called Agent Chen to update her on the situation. "You handled that well," she said. "Casey Morrison is probably going to face federal charges for the embezzlement, and we're reopening our investigation into the police officers who were helping her spread misinformation." "Good. Maybe next time, people will think twice before attacking a federal witness and his daughter." "Nathan, can I give you some advice?" "Sure. You've been through hell, and you've come out the other side stronger. You've got your daughter, you've got your life back, and the people who tried to destroy you are in prison where they belong. Don't let the Casey Morrisons of the world drag you back into that darkness. You're better than that, and Sophie needs you to stay better than that." She was right, of course, but sometimes being better than your enemies isn't enough. Sometimes you have to show them the consequences of their actions, not just for your own sake, but to protect the people you love from future attacks. "I understand what you're saying, Sarah. But I'm not going to let anyone hurt my daughter, ever again, whatever it takes." "I know. Just remember that Sophie needs her father to be a hero, not a vigilante. Don't worry, I know the difference." But as I sat there in the darkness, listening to the sounds of suburban tranquility, I wondered if that was really true. The line between justice and revenge had blurred so much over the past year that I wasn't sure I could see it anymore. All I knew for certain was that anyone who threatened my daughter would learn what a Navy SEAL was truly capable of. And unlike Derek Tully and Emma Harlan, I wouldn't make the mistake of underestimating my enemies or leaving witnesses behind. The war was over, but I was still standing, and I intended to keep it that way.